Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host Alex, and with me I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Oh yeah, look, I'm okay. We wanted at least a win from the two games, and we got that. So, and the other game delivered, in a whole other sense as well. So it was good weekend.
I was going to say because that was it. We said before the two games that we wanted to get a win out of the two as almost a minimum, and then you kind of come out of that Sunderland game with a 4-4 result, and you think, geez, this wasn't a win, but it's almost the same result in the sense that, like, it's, the excitement, it's the goals, it's showing that fluidity and positivity in the squad as well, where even if it had been a 0-0 draw with Millwall, as it did feel like it might have been for patches of that game, you'd still sort of be pretty happy coming out of those two games.
Yeah, I think after so many nil-nils lately, that coming out and just got a bug. So many nils that it's nice just to watch the boys come out and just go for it and play, as you mentioned, with great fluidity, create lots of chances, score lots of goals. It felt like that's something that had been, that was obviously the missing piece for so many weeks. But I guess the downside was that and I think Rosenia mentioned it after the game, was finding that balance between getting forward and going at them and attacking and playing great football and, keeping it tight at the back as well. So good going forward, not so good defending, but a cracking game to watch. Like, it was just, it was an emotional roller coaster, and I hated and loved every minute of it.
Yeah, because I watched the replay. I didn't watch it live, and got to halftime at 2-2, and was very happy for the fact that I had been able to watch it essentially live and not have it spoiled for me. And then I made the foolish mistake of, I think I was clearing a notification on my phone or something, and up popped this, full-time result 4-4. I went, geez, I was sort of conflicted. I was like, I was annoyed that I'd spoiled the result for myself, but also excited that, the prospect of more goals in the second half. But yeah, look, so obviously going from the start of it, we had Tufan and Pelkas coming in for Longman and Abue, and it felt like with the way that Sunderland set up, it just, as opposed to the previous game with Rotherham, it just felt like there was a lot more space for our wingers to really take advantage of. And there was a few occasions early where Ali was really getting in and behind and creating opportunities. And even the first goal that we scored, just sort of passing it through Sunderland to an extent, and seeing that, we sort of talk about, I mean, we talked about it a bit last week, the evidence of the improvement under Rosenia's largely been defensive, but that first goal was such a good example of the attacking potential that his style and his philosophy brings.
Yeah, I think there was some really, really nice play, I guess, even from both teams. I think it was just a really good game of football to watch, and it probably deserved to end up as it did. Like, we created some really good opportunities, and were playing the ball around, at will with ease for periods. But then we turn it over, and Sunderland go on a counter, and then they camp at our end for a few minutes and create a few decent opportunities. So, I think there was some really good performances. I think, not just for the two goals, but I think Tufan again had a really great game. He seems to be really coming into form and finding his feet on a consistent basis now in the championship. I think, again, that combination with Traore seems to be developing really, really nicely. They seem to complement each other quite well. And I think that the only other comment I have on him is absolute balls of steel to step up to take the penalty on the last kick of the game that you need to score to equalise, and then just to slot a bottom corner was sensational. So I think in that sense it's good that he's beginning to step up as a leader within the squad as well. So I think think if he sticks around, because I think there was allusions to some players may need to be sold to bring in the players that we want. Hopefully, he is one that stays. And I think like if he performs as he has over the last month, if he can drag that out for 3/4 of the season, or the full season would be even better. But for most of the season, then I think already you go, well, it's the same player, but a different player, and the next season looks very different. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, speaking of the penalty, I noticed, I think it was Doherty who held the ball while all the build-up for the penalty was going on, and then just hands the ball to Tufan, which we're seeing a bit more in football since probably the World Cup. Is probably the first time I can think of seeing it. But great sort of composure, as you said, with that penalty. Great finish for that first goal as well. Other standout player, we're sort of alluding a little bit here to our votes that we'll get to later on, but the other standout player I thought was Regan Slater, who, he just seems to personify, or he is the latest reincarnation of the Ian Ashby, the David Myler sort of player, where half the fan base absolutely loves them and thinks that they get stuck in and work hard and are a brilliant player to have on the field. The other half, as soon as we lose a game or have a poor performance, they're the first player that gets singled out as not really offering a whole lot. But his finish for his goal, his assist for Tufan's goal, and also winning the penalty in the last minute as well with the intent or the drive to kind of get the ball forward. It was just got to be just about his best game for the club.
Yeah, and I think not only the finish, but the determination to keep that ball in play as well. Because he's wrestling with the defender who's trying to shield it over the byline, manages to get around him, take a touch to keep it in, and then just a simple touch, give yourself a little bit of angle, and then it was just a blast of it past the keeper from close range. But
striker's finish, yeah.
I think you're right. You're absolutely right. He's one who, we've always been fairly positive about him, but he's. It just, I think, almost week by week makes a mockery of that £50,000 signing fee. Just is
unreal. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know exactly how to describe, but I think his that work rate and that work ethic and that the grit and determination to make things happen and to not give up on a ball and to be. He's also almost always the one who's pressing off, like when it's cleared out off a corner, defending a corner or whatever. It seems to always be Regan Slater who is charging up the field, making a 90-meter sprint to try and put some pressure on their goalkeeper or their defenders so that they can't just play it easily back straight into the mix. So all those little things, those 1%ers, I guess, are what allows players like Tufan and Traore and that to show their attacking ways. So, his influence can't really be understated.
Yeah, and I guess then sort of focusing, I guess, more on the negative side. I mean, like you were saying before with Rosenior's comments, the frustration definitely is there when you think at 1-0 up, Pelkas has that chance. It's basically one-on-one, the keeper gets saved. They go down the other end. It was sort of watching that passage of play. You can almost tell it was going to end in a goal just because, you have Seri kind of go to ground and almost try to grab the ball to sort of stop the ball and give them the free kick up the field and stop that break. The ref waves advantage. I think it's then Coyle potentially fouls one of their players and the ref plays the advantage from there. And they just kind of kept pushing the ball up the field despite all these fouls. And basically just break through our line and score the goal. And then to score almost immediately again from kickoff as well to go 2-1 up. And you sort of think for all of the positive play to start the game, we've sort of capitulated, in the matter of minutes. And it's Rosenior's comments after the game of, there was great attacking play, but it's just that capacity to set up shop and shut up shop, I should say, and not concede those sorts of goals.
Yeah, certainly is concerning. I guess at that point it almost felt like Sunderland might very well run away and turn into it could have ended up 4-1. The way it sort of felt like momentum had suddenly shifted. So that certainly is a negative. But I guess without just trying to find a positive in everything. The positive is that, again, that we are able to dig ourselves out of that hole, even though we pretty much dug ourselves into that hole with some poor defensive work. So absolutely, I think that finding that balance, the balance wasn't quite there in that game against Sunderland. It's almost, you go, all of the attacking threat was there. We've seen over the last 2 months how defensively stable we can be. So it kind of actually is almost like, it does in a sense feel like 2 points dropped, even though Sunderland were the team that were ahead, in the final minute of the game. Kind of, when you look at the bigger picture and you go across the last, we've had 0-0, 0-0, 0-0, and that's been disappointing. And then, then we go to Millwall and we jag the 1-0, score 4 goals in that game, and somehow somehow only get a point. It's a weird, it was a very strange game, but I think it was good in the sense that for lots of people, like players, fans, everyone, it was very positive. It was just a positive game to watch, and so I think it helped to rebuild the positivity leading into these last few games, because it seemed there was quite a lot of moaning about another 0-0, another 0-0, etc. So.
Yeah, that's it. And like you said, I think it was definitely the best game for the club for a number of players. I think another one might be Ali, who put in a really good display. And he's someone that we've sort of seen in bits and pieces this season and not really put it all together. And I think this was one of his more complete performances with his play on the wing. Getting his goal, I think it's his first goal for the season as well. It was funny because he sort of taps it in and he almost doesn't know how to react. Like, I think he sort of looks first to check if he's offside, where it's like, of course you're not offside. But, taps it away. Great finish, great composure. And yeah, an all-round great game from him as well.
The check for offside is probably force of habit. I think he gets caught offside. He gets caught offside quite a lot normally, so, which is surprising because he actually has so much pace, and he'll burn most of the defenders he's up against. So he can give himself the extra yard and make sure he's onside. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It was a good finish. Got himself in the right position, anticipating that ball might bounce out in that to him, and took no chances, no prisoners, and just put it away, which was good. So yeah, it was almost like the one half of our field that going forward played really, really well, and the half defending, didn't come together. So just a strange game.
Strange game. And then I guess the last thing to comment on, so the penalties, I guess the Sunderland penalty to me felt quite a soft one. I think it was Jones who was getting in the back of the Sunderland defender, but the Sunderland player, but goes down pretty easily, I thought. But then Slater's was pretty stonewall. I think it was your comment after the game that it was bizarre that the Sunderland defender tried to claim he didn't get a touch on him. It was so clear.
Yeah, I think certainly Sunderland's penalty was like, it was a little soft, but I think I'm now almost so cynical of everything. It's just like, why did he just didn't need to have his hands on the player at all, Alfie Jones, and so I think he, unfortunately, even though I think the Sunderland players milked it a bit and Jones was unlucky, he kind of almost gives the ref no choice by he's clearly touched, had the hands in the back and give him a little shove, but not much, when he didn't really need to, and so the ref, I guess, felt like he had no choice. But certainly on Slater's a brilliant little turn to just swivel away from the defender, and then absolutely 100% chop down, clear contact, clear everything, didn't get a piece of the ball, didn't do anything apart from, but then turns around to the ref and starts waving his finger going, no, I didn't touch him, I didn't do anything. And you're like, what are you hoping to get out of this?
There's no VAR.
He's a few meters away, he's got clear line of of the whole action. Such a strange thing, but I suppose you got to try.
That's it. I guess you got to do anything you can. I'll give my votes for this one first of all, and I went Slater for the 3 votes. I thought he was head and shoulders for me. The goal, the assist, winning the penalty as well. Brilliant link-up play through the game as well, and just pretty much his best game for the club, I would say. Tufan, the 2 votes, obviously the 2 goals for him. Probably another player who had his best display in a City shirt in this one. Cracking finish for that first goal, and as you said, the great composure for the penalty as well. And then Ali with the 1 vote, rounding out 3 players who probably played their best games in City shirts. Pretty much said all that we need to say on Ali already, but I thought he looked really exciting. And it was one of those games where you look at a player and you go, okay, I can finally see it. I finally get it with that player in what we're expecting to see out of them, because you see it sort of in bits and pieces in previous games, but when you see it all come together in this game, it looks really impressive.
Yeah, I can't really argue with any of those players or the order that they're in, so I'm just gonna just agree essentially.
Fair enough. Well, we'll talk Millwall then, where we saw one change. We saw Ebue come in to start for Traore. Traore obviously coming back from a year out with injury, not going to push him too hard to play every 3 days, which I think was the right decision. For large parts of this game, it did feel like it was just going to follow that script of being a 0-0 or a 1-1 sort of game that we've seen so much of lately. We started reasonably well. Tufan with that great header at the back post off it and a Ebue ball in. Then Millwall sort of growing into the game after that. I don't know if you've seen Rosenior's comments from post-game. He was very, very critical of that first half, more so than I expected, because I didn't think it was that much worse than we've seen in other games previously. And maybe it's just his patience wearing thin in terms of those sorts of performances.
Actually, I did see that, because he basically said as happy as he was with the second half performance, he was unhappy with the first, I think was the phrasing or something like that. Which, is interesting, because was the overall performance in the first half much worse than some of the other games over the last month or so? Probably not. But I think the difference, I guess, is in that one game, the stark difference between, and I don't even know if it's necessarily effort, but the execution in the second half versus the first half. I get the sense with the three halftime substitutions that they were read the riot act at halftime. And I think that's part of it. They obviously, I reckon they got a bollocking. They all come out and said, yep, we got a lift. But yeah, it was, I think, first half was pretty cagey in a lot of senses. Like each team, a few chances. Bloody Millwall, how many times did they hit the crossbar or the post? But we had a couple of chances, then they sort of camped themselves, but they just couldn't quite create an opening. And it did sort of feel like it was drifting into another, 0-0 game. But I sort of had a sense that someone was going to score. And I'm glad it was us, because I sort of also felt like with the pressure that Millwall was building, I thought if they scored 1, they were probably just going to go and score 2 or 3. Especially the last section of the first half, where they were just around our box for 10 or 15 minutes essentially.
And massive credit to Darlow, because the saves that he made to keep it 0-0 in the first half were huge.
Yeah, he had an outstanding game. I thought that was probably one of the best keeping performances from a City keeper I've seen in quite a while, because it was just sensational. Some of those saves were immense. So, yes, he played really, really well. But I think everyone sort of stepped up. I thought McLaughlin was really impressive. He was throwing himself into so many challenges and coming out injured, but just getting up and carrying on with it. It's quite quite a few players really impressed in this game as well. But I guess first half was big. Second half we came out, we seemed to be much more direct. We seemed to be able to get those passes and those movements to work that we couldn't quite get to work in the first half. So created a few more opportunities. Some nice play leads, into Traore. Fakes one way, steps back across the defender, just places at bottom corner. Great finish, and well deserved, because I thought he was he's one that came on at half time and just was making a difference, was looking forward, looking to play balls in behind the defence to try and turn Millwall around and create some problems. So,
I was going to say, sort of your comment earlier, that the contrast of the two halves, it was, I think, no better typified than the performance of Traore straight in the second half at the start. I think it was almost straight from kickoff. You had Elder and Traore linking up to get the ball forward and creating something straight away. I think we won, was it 2 or 3 corners in a row in quick succession from that play. You could tell the difference almost straight away. And so you could tell, as we saw post-game with Rossini's comments, that clearly he'd given the players a rev up at half time. I thought it was interesting with Greaves going off. I mean, I can understand. Abue is a really interesting one. And I've as a spoiler, I've changed my votes. I originally had Abue in for 1, but after seeing Rossini's comments, I was a bit scared that Liam might watch this episode and hunt me down to correct me on that one. He was pretty ferocious in his comments, but I didn't hate Abue's game in the first half as much as I have some of his previous games. And that sort of comes back to my comment of this first half didn't feel any worse than some other games we've had recently. I thought, for instance, I sort of mentioned the chance he created for Tufan 10 minutes in, where it was a really wet pitch. A lot of the players were slipping and sliding and struggling to control the ball. And I thought Abue did really well with his ball control. I think looking at some of the stats, his ground duels, he won something like 5 of his 6 ground duels, whereas Ali, for instance, won 1 of his 6. So you think, if I don't know quite what ground duels refer, I'm assuming that's 50-50s, I suppose, challenges or things like that. So I thought his effort wasn't terrible. I think his style, he's the sort of player that has that very languid sort of casual style, which I think Ali in the meantime is sort of sprinting and putting himself in really hard. So the supporters see the effort, see Abue not necessarily putting the same effort in. But I didn't think he was terrible. But at the same time, obviously gets hooked off. And I would guess, reading between the lines from Rossini's comments, that we might not see him again, judging by his comments around, I only want players out there who are giving 100% effort sort of thing. So I can understand Abue going off more so. I was a bit surprised at Greaves. I thought maybe Greaves was going off because he was playing on the same side as Abue finished the half, because I know Abue got switched over to the left later on and probably just wasn't getting the protection that he needed and was getting a bit frustrated. But look, I thought Elder was great when he came on as well. So I don't know if it was more just getting round pegs and round holes and trying to sort of tighten up the formation. But yeah, can't argue with the second half performance.
Yeah, it was the Abue situation is very interesting, because I thought, like, when they switched Ali and Abue, when they switched wings, that left side actually we seemed to shut up that left side of our defense, like, seemed to be more effective, because whoever's Millwall's right winger was tearing Ali to pieces, in their final third. For long
and it was
periods.
The right hand side when Ali gave that ball away that they almost scored from as well, wasn't it?
Or maybe, I'm not sure.
Or maybe that was the left hand side when he did that dodgy pass back. But anyway, yeah.
But then, like, that seemed to, that was their main avenue for long periods at first half, and then once they seemed to switch wings, it seemed to not be as effective as an outlet. And I think potentially what you say about, like, Abue's style of play, that, like, the perception of effort, or what fans perceive as effort, is pretty unfair, in that, like, because Ali is a player who sprints around everywhere 100% of the time, like, and that is perceived as a higher level of effort than someone who works in a different way, which is unfair. It's unfair to then say that Abue is not putting any effort in, because I think, as you say, I didn't necessarily think it's not like he had a particularly poor game when you compare, like, the first few games, his first few performances for City, which were undoubtedly poor, and he was ineffective and offered nothing for I think his first probably 4 appearances in a City shirt. Where, as you said, like, he's involved in some good build-up play. Almost gets an assist. He's doing what he needs to do, but for whatever reason, is one who's singled out. Perhaps, I don't know whether it's even that some of those players have, maybe pulled up not as well as they thought they did after a short turnaround or something, or like,
Mm.
um, and then, but yeah, I guess that's the thing. We'll never really know what went on in the locker room at halftime, but pure speculation, I suppose. But yes, it was much better second half at the end. I guess at the end of the day, much better second half than the first. And I don't know. I guess it's as much as I say, like, maybe we deserve to win, or like it felt like we almost like dropped points against Sunderland. This seemed like, I'm super glad we won, and I feel like we deserved the result in the sense that we shut up shop, shut them out, and held that 1-0 lead. But also, it didn't really ever feel like a game that we were going to like very clearly and cleanly win. So a bit of a surprising, pleasantly surprising result, I suppose, in that sense. But I think pretty much exactly what we needed, because we're so very close now to actually being mathematically safe. So
Yeah,
which is good.
and also
Like we're safe for all intents and purposes. We are safe, but I think with so few games to go, and I think we're 8 or 10 points or something above the bottom three
just
now.
having a look at it now. So we're 11 points clear of
Oh,
Reading.
11 points. Okay.
They've got 5 games left. We've got 5 games left as well. So I guess what you're sort of looking at, mathematically speaking, one more win would do it.
Yeah.
Or
if we win and they lose on the weekend, very potentially that would just about be it. We'd then have a 14-point gap on them with only 12 points left to play for.
And only 4 points off top half. We can start to sort of look at that as an ambition to finish the season top half if we can. 1 point behind Bristol City in 13th as well. So it's a really sort of clustered little group now that we're in. 7 points ahead of Rotherham in 18th, 2 points ahead of Birmingham in 17th. So you sort of think if we can start to look up the table a bit more, and, pretty crazy to think it's Watford and West Brom in 12th and 11th as 2 recently relegated sides, and we're right in the mix with them to finish in those places. The other thing, looking at the table, the point people were making as well in terms of our form under Rossini and how we're looking for next season, you sort of think there's, call it 5 or 6 draws that we've had that you think we really should have won those games and sort of threw them away. You turn even half of those into wins, and you're looking at like another 7 or 8 points, and all of a sudden, we would be theoretically sitting right on the cusp of the playoffs. So when you sort of talk about the gap in quality or the gap in ability for our side compared to the playoff sides, it's really quite a narrow margin, and it's really just comes down to which sides can play the most consistent football.
Yeah, and I think, we've touched on it before, but we've basically carried that form for half a season, and if you can extrapolate that over the full season, I think we'd find ourselves in a better position had we had Rossini been in charge for the full season. But I guess we'll get to see that next season. But
injuries as well.
Yeah, we've had an atrocious time, which we go, oh, this seems to be finally we're getting to see the alley that we sort of were hoping or expecting to see. Well, you go, well, he's torrid time with injury this season, and if he can get up to to replicate the performance against Sunderland, if Tete can stay fit, I think we might even see Connolly over the last few games again.
Well, we'll talk about the Blackburn game later, but I think he's been ruled out for that one as well, unfortunately.
Yeah, or maybe just send him back. Send him back now. Yeah, so I think like some of the injuries that we've had have had a pretty big impact, and as you say, like if you just look at the your lead position on the table, it doesn't really tell the whole story. Whereas a little bit of a deeper look, a little bit of deeper analysis at at some, where the points have come from, what would happen had we. And I know it's, you're playing the what if game, which is, potentially dangerous and misleading, but I think there's been quite a few factors that have influenced us this season. For the most part, we've dealt with them fine, and I think like it's not a disaster, it's not a catastrophe in any way that we haven't picked up those points. We've still managed to accrue enough points that we're safe. We've essentially done what we needed to do this season. Even like it seems like Ajun was pretty clear, like he wasn't expecting playoffs this season. He wasn't expecting to play Premier League football next season. He wanted to essentially try and build a good foundation for this season. Bring in a core group of players of perceivably a higher quality, or a higher quality than what we had, and just get that foundation for the club a little bit higher than where it was. Get safe, right? And then build on that next year or next season. And I think we've got almost all the pieces in place. And I think it's nice the conversation around, Ajun and Rosina working together, having those conversations and that dialogue about who they want to bring in, what positions they need to target. And but also I think additionally Ajun being quite realistic and saying like, right now we're in no trouble with FFP, but if we can't just go endlessly throwing money around, because then it becomes an issue. So in order to bring in some of the players we might want to, we may need to let some players go. We may need to accept some offers. We may need to sell some players. And I'm appreciative of the open and like honest dialogue that is going on around. Just around the club in general, but pretty much just like everything that there seems to be, someone goes, oh, what about like this? And then we seem to get answers, and we seem to get open, clear, direct answers, which certainly hasn't always been the case. So
yeah,
look forward to the last 5 games. Relax for a little bit until the silly season kicks off, and then crack on again next season. But
that's it. Well, look, I'll grab your votes for this game, and then I'll give mine, and we'll preview the Blackburn game.
Okay. I'm going to pretend that I didn't already see your votes. But I was thinking about this, and I think I'm going to go. I think because of we mentioned how big some of Darlow's saves were. I'm going to give the 3 points to Darlow for what was realistically an immense performance, and pulled off quite a few saves that, by all accounts, in all rights, probably didn't have any right to save. So really kept us in the game in the first half, and then helped us hold on to the 3 points late in the game as well with some really crucial saves. So I'm going to go 3 points to Darlow, and I think for the halftime injection and the influence and the goal, I'm going to go 2 points to Traore. And then I don't know. I think I'll go Macca. I'll go McLaughlin for the 1, because I think he had. Don't you? Is that the player that you were saying you would change the vote? Because of, I think, as I mentioned before, he was throwing himself into everything, desperate, I guess, to atone potentially for what was a pretty poor defensive display, not just from him, but from the team in general against Sunderland. So he seemed to be just desperate to keep that ball out of the box, to keep it away from Millwall strikers. So a point to Sean McLaughlin.
Yeah, look, and that's why I sort of flagged earlier that I was changing my 1 vote, because I thought you might have seen that, and didn't want to think I was copying you on that one. Yeah, I flipped for 2. I went Traore for the 3, Darlow for the 2, although I think, as you said, there's quite rightly a case that Darlow was easily man of the match. I just edged Traore because, as you said, I think it was that halftime injection of sort of attacking flair from him, and then capped off with a brilliant long-range goal. Just edged it for me. And then I went McLaughlin for the 1 vote in the end. I thought he was the standout defender, so I thought he was the other one to single out from the back line for a vote. Cool. Okay, well, let's do a round of Who Am I first of all, and then we'll preview the Blackburn game. We've got I forget who we're playing. I think it's Middlesbrough next Thursday morning. But what we'll do is we'll preview that one in our next episode. So hopefully we can get an episode out next Tuesday or Wednesday to preview that one. But if you're all good to go, we'll do a round of Who Am I?
Yep, sure.
Okay. So I made 20 appearances for City and scored 4 goals.
20 appearances and 4 goals. Feels like someone who we brought in January, like in a January window. But this could be. This is my deceptive thinking. I'm like 20 games. That's like half a season. So it's either someone who was like. It's either like someone who came in for like second half of the season, and I'm trying to think of like which players have done that recently and actually scored some goals, or it's someone who has had a horrendous time with injuries. No, I don't even like. I can't even like click like anyone in my head at the moment. I've got like no real ideas.
Okay. Well, yeah. So I joined City on loan in the 2021 season. So that was our League One season. And I'll give you the extra hint of yes, it was a January signing. So you are on the right track.
Why don't I remember anything about that season? It's like
that's why I picked the player, because I'm like, it's such a because it's like the COVID season. It just feels like it's a season that didn't happen.
I'm trying
to think how many players we signed in that January. How narrow it is.
Was that is that when we grabbed Slater? No, but he's made way more than 20 appearances. So that doesn't even make any sense. Never mind that. That's a stupid guess.
I think Slater joined in the summer, but I mean, like, yeah, in terms of being a lone player, that makes sense. But yeah, more appearances.
I
reckon you're going to know who it is, but you're just going to not be able to get the name. Like, I reckon it's one of those ones you'll know the name when I say it, but you might.
Probably.
Would it help if I told you what club he was on loan from?
I don't know. Would it?
So he was on loan from Cardiff.
I feel like that
he might have scored against us this season.
I feel like that should help us too. But
yeah, I'm pretty sure he did. I can't remember.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I have like a vague like there's like a thread that I just can't pull, which I think if I can manage to pull it is going to like reveal the name that I am trying to think of.
So he did score against us. He scored against us in the game that Slater scored the 2 goals to win it 3-2 earlier this season. Plays as a winger and wore the number 23. I don't think that's going to help much at all.
No.
His surname is a colour. Initials are GW.
Oh. Yeah. Maybe Gavin White.
I knew. So that's the thing, is like I knew from that second clue of like on loan from Cardiff, like I knew you'd know who it is. It's just one of those players where it's like you wouldn't just think of the name because it's like half a season on loan in League One. It's such an obscure one. I was like, it's like a reasonably recent season, and I was like, I'll pluck out a player from then, but it's at least it wasn't like I didn't get like a Jordan Flores or something. 2 appearances, I think it was. But there
I'm
you go.
sure
Yeah, Gavin
that'll be
White.
next week's clue now.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. I was looking at like Adelican as well, who came in
Oh,
first half of the season, but I was like, I feel like that's even more obscure because I think he's like non-league now or something.
mm,
There you go, Gavin White. Yeah, one of those players where I was like surprised that we didn't try to sign him when we went up
mm,
because he was actually pretty good for us. But
yeah.
anyway, cool. Anyway, yeah, Blackburn this weekend. So they're in actually a pretty bad run of form. I was looking at their results. So they've got one win in their last five. They were 2-0 down against Huddersfield and sort of clawed it back to 2-2, which was not a horrible result in the end, but really, I guess, sort of questioning their form heading into potential playoffs. I think they're currently, just pulling it up, sitting, where are they? Sixth. Yeah, so they're right on the cusp of the playoffs, battling it out with Preston and Norwich, I suppose, to be the two, maybe Cardiff and maybe Coventry and Sunderland as well, for that final playoff spot. Which, in fairness, I mean, look, at the start of the season, I don't think people were really expecting them to have a strong season. They've got Brereton Diaz, who's leaving end of this season, brought in John Dale Thomason as their manager. I think they started reasonably well. People thought they were going to drop off, but they've really sort of held place in and around the playoffs. And of course, beat us 1-0 back in October. I think it was Sammy Schmodix with the goal after about 15 minutes. One of those games where I think we sort of conceded early and then just couldn't really get back into it. But I guess, like on the back of 4 points in our last two games, 5 goals scored, bit of confidence in the side, a bit of a rev up from Rossini at halftime against Millwall too, you'd be thinking maybe we go out there with a pretty strong lineup and really attack the game.
Yeah, I think this is a good opportunity for us to essentially play party pooper and, just cause some chaos and upset some other teams' chances because it's about all we've got left to do this season. So I think I'd be looking for, pretty much as close to a top 11 as we could go. We've got get 4 or 5 days. I think you're looking to start Traore. What have we got?
It's a shame. It's a shame.
It's
Oscar
like, have
and
we got? I was going to say, do we got any actual strikers that fit apart
no,
from like Longman-ish? But he's not
I think
really.
Burnsy. Yeah, Burnsy asked Rossini if we are going to get any injuries back, and he said no, Oscar or Connolly, which is unfortunate. I guess it means Tufan probably playing that false 9 role again, which he looked pretty reasonable doing against Millwall.
Yeah. So then I guess I don't actually I just want to backpedal a little bit because Longman came on at halftime and then got subbed off in the
that's true actually.
I assume he may, I don't know, I assume he was that would have to have been injury because there's no
I think he had a knock.
So he probably, I mean, could be nothing, but I imagine he's probably not going to be starting if that's the case. Which leaves us with Pelkas, Ali, Tufan, probably as some sort of a front three, Traore behind, Seri, or maybe Slate. I guess you could throw Slater wide, but Seri Slater. And then, I don't know, Elder or Greaves.
I'd be curious on that one. I mean, if Elder starts that.
I honestly feel like that when either of them have played, it's not like we've looked much worse when Elder has played left back or much better when Greaves has played left back. So I don't really think there's actually that much between them. And I guess partly that's because Greaves is kind of playing out of position. In a sense that he's traditionally been a centre back or a centre half, but I guess he kind of is now. That's his role. So he is essentially, after most of the season there, he's a left back. But I think that's an interesting one. Now he got hooked, whether that was for a lack of effort or a knock, but either way, potentially it opens the door for Elder to start and to either show that he's worthy of a new contract or an extension, or put himself in the window for someone else. So
I'm really curious with Elder because, as you said, I don't think we play that much worse with him in the team, but there seems almost the
I mean, he gets
perception that
slated by the fans, like
yeah,
by plenty in the forums and stuff on the Facebook page and stuff. It seems to be, him and Coyle especially get
yeah.
ripped apart week after week after week whenever they make an appearance. And I
Coyle's
don't
another one I
necessarily.
think's been putting in brilliant displays. We didn't
Mm,
really talk about him against Sunderland or Millwall, but I thought he was fantastic. And you sort of think he's another one that's, I don't think he's technically out of contract because we've got the 1 year option, but you'd think, I just feel like there's always this perception in football that you need to be turning the squad over, and I'm like, surely it makes more sense to keep Elder as a cover option or a depth option than to because otherwise, what if you're getting rid of him? You're basically saying we need to bring in a new first choice left back and a backup left back. And what's the chances that both of those signings work out versus now when you go, we know what we've got with Elder? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me to get rid of him.
I don't. I think we'll keep. I mean, without getting too much in that concept, I reckon we'll keep one of Elder or Coyle, but I don't think we'll keep both. And that'll be an opportunity to say, well, we're going to bring in someone to, a younger, hopefully higher quality, right back to deputise, like under Christie or something, like, because that's a perfect opportunity to bring in a 22, 23-year-old up-and-comer, learn off a really good offer really good right back in Christie and get, there's 100% they'll get some game time next year because in the 46 game season plus cup games and everything, there's no way that that they're not going to get an opportunity. So, but yeah, I think like in terms of sorry, we got tangential there, but lineup, obviously like Coyle, Mack, and Jones will stay the same, and then the question over Elder or Greaves. I'd like to see Elder start, if not just because he's the Aussie in the team, but I think we're at that close to the end of the season, and we're pretty much safe. Why not just give some of these guys again just the opportunity to have a couple of games and give them an opportunity to either prove that they deserve a contract or prove that they're worthy of, for someone else to come in for them. Because that's the worst. I can't imagine anything worse than being a player, being at the end of your contract, and then just like being stuck sitting on the bench week in, week out as you lead into the transfer season.
Well, in that case,
the only thing that would be worse would be if you got injured.
Yeah, I mean, well, then it also raises the question of whether someone like a Doherty comes into the side as another one sort of out of contract or coming to the end of his deal. Because I sort of see it, as you say, you almost go one of two ways with this lineup. You either go, well, let's go full strength as much as we can and try and keep this good form going. Or you say, we're essentially mathematically safe. Let's kind of flip the script and go, we'll give Elder a start. Obviously, Coyle's going to play. You give Doherty a start. You chuck Simons into midfield with Traore maybe. You try different combinations in the midfield to see what things could look like next season. And I guess you don't want to chop and change too much. And I know Rossini's definitely seeing it as this is for people to prove themselves for next season. It's not, we're not on the beach, so to speak. So you kind of got to have that balance, right, of not throwing the competitiveness out too much, but you want to still get a good look at these guys that are coming out of contract. Yeah,
I feel a little bit for Simons because when Seri was injured, he came in and did such a good job, and then like earned himself. We've signed him on the permanent and everything, and he's here. And then basically since Seri's come back, he's just rode the pine. I think he came on as a centre forward against Millwall late in the game. I think that was maybe when after Longman went back off. So hasn't unfortunately really got much of a look in, but I think it's because he plays so similarly to Seri, and we found that when we played two of those players, together, it hasn't really kind of worked.
Yeah, and I think in the same logic as like a backup right back coming in for Christie, I think Simon shouldn't be too worried because Seri's 31, I think, for next season. he's not getting any younger. He's going to want to be rotated for plenty of games. There's definitely that opportunity there for Simons to step in and get plenty of game time next season as almost sort of that next generation replacement for Seri that we've already got in the building. You know, there's that long-term future there.
Yeah, so I think it's certainly frustrating in the short term, but I think like long term, I think he's already quite a player, Simons, but long term could absolutely be, you know, he could be the linchpin of our team, you know, in another two or three seasons or something like that. Once either Seri moves on or retires or whatever, because who knows what's going to happen. His contract might finish and he doesn't want to stay, or he, you know, God forbid, gets, you know, a horrible injury or an injury that's bad enough that he goes, do I really want to go through 12 months of rehab just to like come back, or 6 months of rehab when I can, you know? So it's too many twists and turns really to speculate too much. But I think there's certainly is like depth within our squad, and I guess whether we do get to see some of that would be nice. And I mean, I guess how has Seri pulled up after 2 games in quick succession? Yeah. Every chance they may rotate some off this weekend anyway, just to give some of those guys that played 180 minutes in 4 days or something, and 2 very like tough, like high intensity games. So could actually be, so some of those players may need that rotation out.
How are you seeing the result in this one? Do you think we can jag another win?
I think so. I feel confident. I think like I wasn't too disappointed with some of the nil-nils recently. Was a little bit frustrating that we weren't converting, you know, some of those chances. Yeah, but we were still creating chances. And these 2 games, the most recent 2 games, 4 points in 2, you know, really tough games, is real positive heading into the end. So I'm quite confident, you know, going up against a team who's out of form, but not like they're not toothless. So we do need to be careful. We need to make sure we get the balance right, where we can hold them out, do our damage at the other end, you know, and maintain that lead. But I'm fairly confident that we can get the 3 points.
Yeah, I think 1 win in their last 5 shows that there's a bit of patchiness there, and I think it's something we can take advantage of. I think the side's playing really well. I think you look at guys like Ali, who are coming into a lot of form and confidence at the moment. Slater doing well as well. And Traore, obviously. Traore really sort of hitting top speed, so to speak, at the moment. So I'd love to see him get another start and really try and carry on from that Millwall display. And I could see us maybe sneaking at sort of a 2-1 or a 1-0 potentially. I think we're a bit hard to read at the moment in terms of goals and margins, but after that 4-4, but yeah, look, maybe like a 1-0 sort of result in this one. But otherwise, you know, thanks for joining me as always, Dan.
That's all right. We didn't get to celebrate the 100th appearance last week. So celebrate 101 today.
Should say it's congratulations, 100 episodes for yourself last week, and now the 101st episode this week. So many congratulations. The most prolific contributor on the podcast. I was saying last week, I think it was yourself and Logan were pretty neck and neck in the 90s, and you pulled ahead and got the Centurion first before him.
Yeah, look, I don't know if that's a compliment to my commitment or just, you know, an indication that I don't have a life and the other boys do.
What are you saying about me then?
You read into it what you will. But look, it's been a pleasure. It's nice to come on. It's nice to be able to just chat city, express some opinions in a place where, you know, we're not going to attack each other, you know, and I think like what we're doing seems to be getting I think it's getting better and better every week, every season, every month. So, continue onwards and upwards.
Absolutely.
A few years I'll hit the 200.
That's it. That's it. Well, hopefully we'll be.
If we're still so bored and with so much free time that we can continue to do it.
Yeah, well, that's it. I was worried when your little one came along. I thought, well, maybe the free time's going to dry up for everyone. And yeah, as you say, who knows where we'll all be in a couple of years in terms of availabilities. But look, as long as we can continue to do it, and as long as we're enjoying doing it, podcast will obviously continue. And look, maybe in a couple of years we'll be in the Premier League, and we can explode, our audience and our, interest and everything as well, with more high profile fixtures and all that sort of thing as well. So yeah, as you say, always looking to improve and continue and progress the podcast. So many thanks to you for your commitment to always being able to jump on and have a chat.
All good, mate. All good.
And thank you everyone for listening along. As I said, so probably next week, probably Tuesday or Wednesday, we'll try to get another episode out ahead of that Middlesbrough clash. We'll look back on that Blackburn game, which will hopefully bear another 3 points. But until next time, come on, City.